I have a dream, that's all I need. I'll make it happen with some work and belief. Know what I want, so I'll take it on. I've made mistakes, but mistakes make you strong. Let's break it down for a minute. I want the crown, I'm gon' get it. You hear me loud, man, I'm winning. Yeah, Charlie Sheen will be grinning. These ladies know that I'm sinning, and this is just the beginning. I'm closing in the ninth inning. There ain't no point in resisting. Living life like a dream, live it right, that's the thing. Every night, got a team, I've been tied to the scene. Out on stage, here I'm screaming, okay, it's a dream. And I pray as a team, one day it'll be me. If I want it, then I'll get it. Head down, don't regret it. Push myself to the limit. If I play it, then I win it. I'm just saying, I'm just living for today. For a minute, I don't stay, I just visit. Have no shame, I admit it. Looking right at me to see if I succeed, to see if I believe.
Yes, I did just have the mic muted again for the second night in a row. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. What I was just saying is that we do have a plan going forward. We will be finishing this video tonight. I hope hope tonight's going to be the night we finish everything wrong with apologetics. Remember, our channel focus is anti-apologetics. So we're not just looking at atheism. We're not just looking at Christianity. We're not just looking at Catholicism. We're going to be looking at Baptist, Anglican, Lutheran. If there's an N in it, we're going to be looking at it. Calvinism. We're also going to be looking at Buddhism, Mormonism, Hinduism, Taoism. Anything that has apologetics out there, we're going to be looking at those apologetics, and we're going to be examining them and looking at them and commenting on them. So just be ready for that. Don't expect this channel to just be focused on the Christian issues, okay? We're going to be looking at a lot of stuff on here. Again, keeping it on the theme of anti-apologetics, anti-BS, man. That's what we're all about here. Let's kill the rhetoric and amp up the truth. So let's get to this. Hope everybody can hear me, and let's have fun. No, let me.
You just don't know it, and so then it builds this confidence that then you hear people say when they get in frustrating circumstances, oh, so-called Dr. Bowen, so-called Dr. Davis, right? And that's where that sort of thing
More
comes from.
recently on Tumblr, user has been accusing me now of what is it? It's my white Western elitist historicist bias. Like I don't even know what to do with that. Like
In what context?
as a means of basically of saying this is what historical criticism is. It's an attempt to, it's taking a modern method and ham-fistingly, applying it to these ancient texts as a means to.
So upcoming videos that I'm working on right now is a bookshelf tour for 2024. I didn't do one for 23. I usually do one every year. And I'm going to also do a video where I'm just going to be doing a two-part, which is just the religious stuff I've already read, and then the TBR. And the TBR is going to be about 7 minutes long of just books that I have coming up for this year. This channel's still going to have some book reviews. I'm still going to be, every time that I finish a book, I'll try to do a review on it. Tertullian's coming up next. But when it comes to the live streams, we are going to be hitting different topics. So different religions, different theologies, different faiths. And let's get to this.
To try and understand them, but can't possibly, because it's not getting inside inside the middle or inside them. But it's a form of this kind of intellectual anti-intellectualism, where you apply a label to someone, liberal scholars,
Poisoning the well. Sort of.
It's a way of I think dismissing the stuff that you either frightens you or you don't understand.
Yeah.
Or both, right? Because it's I just when I read stuff like that, I just shake my head and I'm just like, you just have no idea how hard scholars work to try and understand the literature on its own level.
Yeah.
Right? Which.
And again, I just feel this is not a fair assessment of everything that's going on in the apologetics world, or even in the broader Christian world, because Christianity itself, without these particular guys, as we called them on one of my streams, the Dark Magisterium, without them making these comments, without their input, we do have Christian intellectuality growing again. It's almost a second renaissance, or a second enlightenment, where there is access to information and people are able to gather information and make their own decisions on that information that they're gathering. The internet is a powerful tool. So I kind of feel, in a way, these guys are both irrelevant and super important to the conversation. But I think what's happening in the world of apologetics is more connected to the everyday Christian than what these guys are doing in academia. Because the academic consensus will change. But what's happening on the floor level of Christianity is sort of this regurgitation of the basic facts, of the simple truths of Christianity. So I don't think that their dismissal of that is healthy, because Christianity is going to survive whatever academic rigor they put through it. That's, again, why this channel is focused on more than just Christianity. That's why I want to talk about things like Buddhism and Confucianism. I wonder if there are academic studies doing this exact same level of scrutiny on the Buddhist scriptures or on the Taoist scriptures. There's a lot of stuff. I've been to China. I've seen some of these ancient libraries up close and personal, and there are texts and tomes and books there, just like there is in Christianity, just like there is in Hinduism, just like there is in Islam. There's a lot of writing on this stuff, and if no one's looking into it, no one's questioning the authenticity or doing textual criticism on those texts, that's a very large shame, especially if it's not happening here in the West. So, like, the West is all academia on Christianity, and the East is all academia on Buddhism or Confucianism. That's a shame. That's a lack of transfer of knowledge going on. There's things that can elucidate. There's a lot of stuff I learned in Taoism that helps me understand things in Christianity. Not that the two are compatible. They're absolutely not. But the amount of tint and the amount of hue that you can pull out of the diorama of the coloring of Christianity can be intensified when you're able to look at how different religions handle these same issues. So anyway, let's keep going.
Which is what we're doing. Like that's maybe that's another way to understand the difference between critical scholars and apologists. Apologists are trying to make sense of the literature, the Bible, within this context that works for them in the here and now, right?
Well, no. Apologetics is about defending the faith. Polemics is about attacking another faith. Hermeneutics is about making the faith, the writings of the faith, make sense within the context of the faith itself. The Bible is constantly interpreting itself and recontextualizing itself as the literature expands. So when you're talking about, let's talk about pre-biblical scripture. So you're talking about the books that were lost that are mentioned in, I think it's in Chronicles, or it could be in Exodus. I think it's the Chronicles of the Kings and the Book of War or something like that. Anyway, there's like 2 or 3 books that are missing. You look at that old literature, and whatever of that literature survives into Leviticus and Deuteronomy. So that version of Judaism, that version of the religion of Israel, that would be an amazing religion to get a hold of, because that's what Judaism was before it became Judaism. That's pre-Davidic, pre-First Temple Judaism. There's a door there that we just can't open because those texts are lost. Then you get to the Old Testament, and then so you have this one history, or this one set of writing that then gets lost after the destruction of the First Temple. So let's assume the First Temple is real, because you do have evidence of a temple-like structure. You do have findings of the name of the true God in a temple area underneath the ground. So you have to compress what the idealized version of David's temple was, and look at the actual temple that's found. And so it might be a little bit smaller. It might not be so built up in the way that later Judaism would look at it. And you got to see these satellite shrines and temples on different mountains, and how they're all fighting for importance and priority. And so you have that Judaism that's going to be closer to the Judaism that we understand. And then you're going to have the exile. And you're going to have, when they're coming back from Babylon, all these new influences that will change the context of the Bible going forward. And then you're going to have this pullback to this oral history that we're not 100% tight on, but that's going to become, Genesis. And so you have these writings develop and built, okay? These writings are, every new writing, whether it's a generation later or 2 generations later, is recontextualizing and reinterpreting this previous stuff. So it's reinterpreting, you already have this big major reinterpretation of what little scraps you find in the destroyed First Temple. And then you have, from there, the recontextualize of the older oral tradition that comes from pre-Israelic culture in this, Semitic milieu of different groups, the Hyksos, Israelites, if that's what they were called. You have all this different stuff, the Hebrew Semitic mix, right? And then you're going to have Kings and Chronicles reinterpreting each other. You even see Leviticus and Deuteronomy reinterpreting each other. And then as the gaps get larger, you have new context, new discoveries, new pantheons to deal with, new cultures to deal with, and new development within your own society to deal with. And that takes a lot of work. And that apologetical work has to be done, because you have to recontextualize what the Bible's message is for today. You always have to do that, and you always have to have a defense ready. Going back to the Bible, I mean, in Christianity itself, Paul is doing apologetics and polemics. Jesus is doing a type of hermeneutic to the Old Testament. So this stuff is ingrained in the Bible. Psalms does a lot of work to recontextualize passages in the Bible. You know, you think God wants a sacrifice. He wants a sacrifice of blood. You don't understand what he wants is a contrite heart and it's a broken heart and a contrite soul. Is that the line? But Psalms itself is doing that. So like, even in the core of the Old Testament, you have this recontextualization, this apologetical work going on. That is part of biblical tradition. And I think just because we don't use the word apologetics at that time period, just like you don't use the word Trinity to describe what apologetics and theology will pull out and call the Trinity, it's there. It's what's being done. The human hermeneutics is being worked on. So I think your discount of this is, if not uncharitable, it's a little unforgiving. It's a little harsher than the reality that it's actually in. The reality is that it always has to be recontextualized for the culture and society that it's in. That's how it stays relevant.
Scholars are trying to make sense of the biblical text in their world.
First off, if you haven't made money with AI yet, don't worry. AI is the big...
And you have to, of course, this means you have to employ techniques and methods that have been developed over, hundreds of years, in order to access this stuff, and understand it as best as we can.
And also, there's a long biblical tradition of this reinterpretation happening and this critical analysis happening. You look at what Jerome does when he's analyzing the Bible. You look at what Augustine does, John Christensen, Origen. You look at how they're breaking down the text and how they're making these connections and how they're reinterpreting, both in a Christian context and even sometimes in a Jewish context, the older parts of the Old Testament. So you might not like those methods, but they are real methods. And using a lens of everything pointing to Jesus is one of those methods. And if you're a Christian, that is what you're supposed to do. You might not like that, but that's why you're not a Christian. And if you are a Christian, then you just got to get over it. That's what it is. If you're Jewish and you're recontextualizing the Bible through the view that is pointing to Jesus, then it's time for you to become a Christian. So you gotta remember your audience. And I think sometimes with this type of mythicism that happens in the edges and the fringes of academia, and the kind of skepticism that grows is a problem. I know that when I'm reading, just for an example, when I'm reading Hindu texts, I'm not trying to find a way that it can't be true, or find a way that it won't work. You yourself, I think it was you actually in this video, or maybe a different video, talk about how the job that they were doing is that they were trying to find a way, they were trying to find proof that this was true. I'm not asking you to prove that it's true or false. What I'm saying is that I think you look at apologetics the wrong way when you look at it as a non-scholarly pursuit. Because there is scholarship there, it's just apologetical scholarship. And you might say it's irrelevant in your world, but you are irrelevant in the greater Christian world, and that's just how it is. I would love to tell you that my channel has 1,000 views right now and that things are going great, and my learnedness is reflective of the audience that I pull in, but it's not. And right now you guys are popular, but I guarantee you in the long time of history, in the long strain of history, people are still going to be reading John Christensen. They're not going to be reading you, not in 1,000 years, at least not for this topic. Maybe if you write a really good fiction, maybe something like that, but no, you're not relevant to the greater story. And that's something that I think critics of the Bible have to understand, that the Bible is going to outlive them. The Bible is going to still be important long after your criticism of the Bible is no longer relevant.
But at the heart of it, that's the goal, is to try and get to the point of the literature in its own time, in its own place, and to make this accessible and understandable to people in the modern world. And I think that's one of the things that I think surprised me the most the deeper I got into my own critical studies of the Bible, was just how weird and strange the text actually is, in this world really is. Because from in my own upbringing, in my own modern Christian context, I was always told that this is something that was written for me now, so it's got to be understandable. Actually, is right.
Check 1 2, check 1 2. Just checking on sound.
Blows my mind more and more.
Really
as
is
I dig into
because
it.
I never because
It's just how
from
far
in my own
away we are for here and now from what these texts are and where they came from and what they were, for whom they were written and the purposes for them.
Check 1 2, check 1 2. Just checking on sound.
It's just
Good.
It's one of those mind-blowing things.
I mean, comments like this, and I noticed because my computer gives you like a little corner notification. I just glanced over for a second. You will hate it when God has the last laugh. He purposefully put just enough there to make you go the way you want. The game has rules called faith.
This is the other thing that I find, and this could go a completely different direction, but maybe not. I think there's a security in certain apologists, when it comes to this apocalyptic idea. Because, I wrote that chapter in that Routledge volume on violence and genocide and, evangelical morals and how they wrestle with morality in the Old Testament. And one of the things that I talked about is, and I see this online, and you just gave an example of it, so many apologists are not only looking to deal with these passages about violence and genocide in a way that allows them to sleep at night. Instead, much worse, they're taking pleasure in these passages.
Did you know that your old YouTube channel has actually been making you money every single day? It's true. I have an old...
I know you guys have seen this video, I'm sure, but, Skylar Fiction and I did an interview with a young man.
Oh, yeah.
And Skylar said, something to him like, so if God commanded you to do away with a small person, would you do it? Or no, he said, would it be moral? And the guy said, yeah, I would do it if God commanded me to do it. Yeah. And he said, you would off a small person if God commanded you? And the guy said, yeah, oh yeah. And of course I put the Kool-Aid, yeah, oh yeah, on top of it. But, but,
Oh my gosh.
But I mean, think about that. It's this apocalyptic mindset, because look, we're the persecuted group. We're the ones that are suffering. We're the ones that are having.
And again, I don't like I don't like this approach either, because there are parts of the world where Christianity is being legitimately persecuted, and there are parts of the world where Islam is being legitimately persecuted. There are parts of the world right now where Judaism, where those who are Jewish, are being legitimately persecuted. And just because it's not happening in this current society doesn't mean it's not a current world problem. Slavery is actually at the height right now of a problem in the world. So yeah, it's not out in the open in the West, but there are parts of the world that slavery is a huge deal, and there are parts, hidden parts in the West where there is issues of slavery. So to act like there's not persecution in religion, that religious people are not being persecuted in parts of the world, is like trying to act like there's no slavery currently in the world just because we have the Emancipation Proclamation. There's still slavery in the world today. There's still religious persecution going on today. Heavy religious persecution. There are countries where you're not allowed to be openly religious. And yeah, I'm sure there's at least one country where you're still not allowed to be openly atheist. Sure. But currently you're allowed to be both openly religious and openly atheist in this country and in most Western countries. So to act like there's not persecution on religious basis is a falsehood, and it's a dangerous falsehood. Anti-Semitism is up. Anti-Catholicism is up. This is a dangerous line of thinking. Just because you don't like an aspect of faith, a blind trust aspect of faith, doesn't mean that religion is bad. And even religious people will look at someone who says that they're talking directly to God like they're a little nuts, and they'll investigate before they just buy into what that person's saying. But if God told you to do something, first off, if you don't believe in free will, if God told you to do something, you're going to do it. You don't really have a choice anyway. But let's just say that you believe in free will. If God tells you to do something, yeah, you follow what God says. But that's assuming you know who God is and that you know that you're talking to God. It would be very hard pressed to find someone who says that they're directly talking to God who other Christians take seriously on a manner of life and death decisions. That's why the cults that do those kind of things and the sects who do those kind of things are so sensational. It's because it is such a rare thing. Maybe it happens too often for your comfort, but it's rare enough that if the Pope suddenly today decided to become pro-choice, Catholics wouldn't follow them. They just wouldn't. The faith is stronger than any one individual person, even if that person is in leadership. People do turn on their congregations all the time when the pastor ends up being a creep or ends up being a very bad person. I'm not saying there's not people who don't, who wouldn't still follow, but the number of people who follow would decrease rapidly once that violation of trust happens. So when you say, oh, but this guy said, yeah, he would do it if God told him to, you got to understand that his understanding of what God is and who God is not your understanding of who and what God is. So he's not saying if an anthropomorphic vision of a being within the universe told him to do something, he would do it. That's not the statement. If someone's saying that, if my dog told me to do something, I'll go follow it, then that person is nuts. What they're saying is that if the omnipotent creator of the universe spoke to me directly, of course I'm going to follow. I follow the Bible already. Of course I'm going to follow his word. He's making two statements there. One, obviously if that happens, you follow. Even you, if God directly came to you and told you to do something, you're going to do it. Even if an alien invader came in and said, hey, we got some secrets, you'd at least consider really hard whether or not what they're saying was real or not. If the President of the United States took you to the White House and said, hey, this is what we're going to do, we want you to be part of it, you're not just going to dismiss it. You're just not. That's not how reality works. That otherwise there wouldn't be things like the FBI and the CIA. Like soldiers, spies, people follow orders. The other thing, though, that he's saying is something. He's yielding to authority. So he's already accepted the authority of the Bible. So what he's not saying is that if I hear a booming voice, I'm going to go follow it tomorrow. That's not what he means by that. So you're being a little unfair, even though that he said something callously. And to be fair, if I was in an interview like that, I would probably say something callous like that as well. I'm not putting him down for being callous in his answer to you. But I think that there's some discredit to your intelligence, which is your intelligence is very high, when you downplay what he's meaning when he says, of course, I'll do what God commands. If you are a soldier, you will follow what the general says. If you are a citizen, you'll follow what the president says. Like, you just will. So I think you're not reading human nature correctly when you're critiquing this in this manner.
Having to take it on the chin right now, but just you wait. Just you wait.
Yep.
When
You'll
God
get
comes
yours.
back, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking of someone that we won't mention their name very specifically now, you know, like a staircase up to when Abraham offered the staircase. You know, like this person is looking forward to putting his foot on our necks. You know?
If you want to get a chuckle, but also see how deep this goes, love letters from Christians to Richard Dawkins. If you have not watched that,
Wow.
we'll have to watch it after we're done recording here. So you can.
And again, this just leads to whataboutism. This is not a good critique. I had a video when I first started that Godless Cranium went after. I got death threats. I got everything, man. I got people calling me the R word, people just going after me. And I had experienced that with the Christians before. You know, I was picked on when I was a teenager. I was called the F word. I was picked on for being friends with people who were gay and trans and what do they call it? BIPOC, people of color, you know, people different in the group, people who spoke a different language than everyone else. Yeah, I got to experience that from Christians doing that. So yeah, I know Christians do that. But I also got to experience atheists doing this. Very rude, very violent, very disgusting things were sent to me after Godless Cranium did his piece on one of my videos. And that didn't deter me from the internet. I'm still here. To be honest with you, I had fun with it. I did not personally get offended, but there was offensive stuff in there. And anyone who started talking violence, whether it was against me or against Christians or Muslims, I just simply blocked them. Especially after some videos I did on the Vigilant Christian Mario, I had to block some people who I guess they thought I was an atheist because I was taking down the Vigilant Christian Mario, and they were just saying some heinous things that I couldn't allow on my channel. And for me personally, it was really hard because up until that point, I had been a free speech absolutist. So to suddenly be like, well, I can't let this on my channel. So again, you're being a little bit uncharitable, and you are opening the door to whataboutism. You know, what about the atheist that does this? What about the atheist that does that? You know, and not all of them are teenagers who are just, you know, trying to be edgy. These are grown adults with degrees and families who are being disgusting and harassing and doing bad things and saying real threats. And these are atheists. This is not the Christians doing that. So yeah, I get it, but it's not one-sided. And we're all adults here. We're all choosing to put our opinions out here. So, anyway.
You can see it's very short, but it is the funniest and saddest thing at the same time. You're laughing because you're going, how ridiculous, you'll see why. But there are moments where you're going, these are real people who really wrote Richard Dawkins this, and they're Christians. And yeah, it's like, well, God's hate works for my hate here on this. And even if it's not a political thing, and oftentimes it is, it's something social or ethical or political or something like that, sometimes it's just heaven and hell. Like right here, they're not happy with the fact that James Tabor literally says that the New Testament gospel is contradicted and there's a problem. Yeah. Somebody's not telling the truth or somebody's being inaccurate or something. And that person got so mad. You all hate it when God has the last laugh. It's like, what?
Yeah.
What is going on here? Great God, you know?
And that's the thing, like, when people bring up, like, passages like Psalm 137 and, you know, the lament and, you know, happy as he who bashes your, you know, heads against the rocks. Like, and the apologetic, standard apologetic is, oh, look, this is a lament. This isn't God giving this command. Like, why this is a thing throughout the Psalms? Like, this is the intent of God, is to bring about these violent acts, right? This is not an anomaly. It's just a very straightforward way of picturing it. But certainly that's not an idea that Yahweh's standing back going, what? No, my gosh, we
I didn't
would
say
never be
kids.
so violent.
So to argue that that's the intent of God in the Bible is really overreading the text. I think of the Iphigenia and the sacrifice of the daughter for the winds. And the intent of, I think it's Athena, is that the only way for the winds to come back is to do an act that's so horrific that no man would do it, so this will prevent the war from happening. But man's ill intent is so strong that he willingly sacrifices his daughter and fools his best friend. That's how there's a disagreement in the beginning of the Iliad. So it is very easy to be uncharitable and say, well, based on my modern standards, this is a terrible act that was done by Agamemnon, and so he deserved to be tortured and murdered by his wife. But then the gods themselves pull in a meeting, and in the meeting they judge. It's the first legal trial recorded in history, is how most people report on it. I don't know if it really is the first one, but that's what people say. People say this is the first trial that's recorded. And the gods go over of whether or not it's an act of piety, whether it's a proper act, an act of justice. You have these same kind of formulas in the Bible. So you have passages that say not to kill right next to passages that say go ahead and kill this, and then you have other passages that says to forgive right next to passages that says sweetest revenge. Well, which way is it? What's pulling? What's the story here? And it's telling a story of humanity. People really mistake the Bible for a story about God. It's about the relationship of the Hebrew people to God. It's about their understanding of their relationship to God. It's not a story about God. God's not the main character in the story. I know that's hard for a lot of Christians to hear. I know that's hard for a lot of people to hear, but God is interacting with people to try to save them, to interact with them, to guide them. But he's not forcing them to choose the right thing. He's letting them make mistakes. You might not be happy with that, but that is what he's doing. And so the people writing the Bible are reflecting these differing viewpoints. And it's our job as the reader to reconcile that. It's our job as the believer to discern what it means. And if you're not doing active reconciliation, if you're not doing active discernment with the Bible, then you're misusing a very powerful tool. But that's not a problem with God, and that's not a problem with the text. It's a problem with the people who are reading it choosing to take it literal, or ultra literal in this case. So your dismissal of apologetics is also the dismissal of what allows people the latitude to not follow every dictate that could be implied non-explicitly through the Bible, all the non-explicit dictates. So just, you wouldn't read any other ancient text in the manner that you're trying to force upon the Bible, both you as its critic and the evangelical fundamentalist as its turn the Bible into an idol. You're both wrong. You're both stuck in this evangelical literalist interpretation that you guys both need to pull away from. It shouldn't be the standard. Literalism should not be the standard here.
But the thing is, I think that mindset, again, particularly in the apocalyptic genres, you can't help but read through Revelation as a Christian and feel like, yeah.
This audiobook on Amazon has made me over $20,000, and I didn't even make it myself.
Yeah. One of these days, Alice, and that was a really bad example to use, I'm sorry. But, I said at the end of that article, even though apologists will say, look, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord, I will.
So, especially as a child, I had some heinous things happen to me. Just to say things that will not get anyone in any legal trouble, let's just talk about the bullying part of things. I got spit on, I got rocks thrown at me, my friends got jumped. I got jumped when I was younger, and then eventually I got muscles, and that kind of changed the equation a bit. But I was ostracized for being quote-unquote different. I've had to deal with public humiliation before. And it's not an easy thing to go through. And one of the first books of the Bible that I was able to read to completion, not the whole Bible, just one of the sections I was able to get through, was Revelation. And I used to read Revelation to myself as a bedtime story in roughly around junior high time. So, let's say from 6th grade to maybe ninth grade. And I'm just kind of guessing because I don't exactly remember when I was doing this. But Revelation was a book I could read over and over and over again. And I got a lot out of it. And a lot of the symbolism I would love to see when I would watch wrestling. I love, the NWO. When I was reading comic books, I loved a lot of the stuff. It's an imprint that's no longer around, but they had characters who were dealing with the impending apocalypse, and they were trying to either prevent it or make it happen. And these were third-party independent comics. These are not like mainstream comics. Razor, Lethal Strike. What was there's a few other ones. There's Purgatory, Lady Death. And that's what they were dealing with. So again, I feel your assessment here is very not only unfair but unhonest to the human condition. There is great comfort in hope of justice and hope of forgiveness and hope of ultimate reconciliation of the world. And that's not just present in Christianity, and that's not just present in religious outlooks. There's philosophies that also look at ultimate justice. There's everything from the Egyptian Book of the Dead to karma, to the idea in Hinduism that you have to karmically pay your dues for anything you did wrong previously. Each new life, whether it's a good life or a bad life, is depending on how you lived your previous life, and you're trying to go through every reviviation until you turn back into the one, till you get back to the one single avatar of truth. So I think this is uncharitable, unfair, and wrong. I don't think your estimate of Christianity is correct here. I think your understanding of Revelation, specifically, since that's what you brought up, is being colored by the fact that you have fallen into this mythicist type camp. Whether it's Digital Hammurabi, whether it's Mythvision, you're going into kind of an not just anti-apologetics, that's my thing, but to an anti-theistic realm. And even if you're not an anti-theist, you yourself are falling into the anti-theistic tropes. And I think you should pull back from that. Can the Bible be misused? Yes, but so can everything. So that's not a reason not to trust the Bible. Anyway, I'm ranting. Let's keep going.
Will repay, right? There are two things that always stand out to me. One, when you know that it's coming, it can be very difficult, and it was for me, for a Christian to not think of ways to help the process along. Yeah, right.
Not a reason.
And secondly, if you know that your Lord hates a certain group of people and will destroy them if he were to come back right now, it's pretty easy to hate that group as well, even.
So, again, I feel like that's a problem with the denomination and with the preacher that you're following. It's not a problem with the actual Bible. There's a video that I made based on a lady named Kim. I can't remember what it is. I haven't put the video out yet. This is everything changing in my life, so I just haven't gone back to the video to edit it. And also, it's a very long video to edit. But in there, I talk about a lot of personal, private stuff that went on through my life. And she talks, because I'm reflecting on what she's talking about, and she's a out lesbian Catholic. And she's talking about her struggles in her life and her bad decisions that hurt other people. And I do the same thing when I'm watching it. I try to reflect on that. By reading the Bible, it made me a much better person. The way that I treated people and the way that I handled situations before reading the Bible, even for the first time. Even that first time that I didn't even finish the Bible the first time, when I got stuck somewhere in Numbers or wherever, in the Begots, it still changed my life for the better. It still made me start making better choices, better moral choices, and it helped me develop a sense of morality and a sense of ethos, and got me on the path to philosophy. So, while I get what you're saying, it's unjustified, even though you can justify it by finding examples of people doing it, because you can find examples of people following D&D too literally, or Vampire the Masquerade too literally, or the Marquis de Sade too literally. These aren't guidebooks to life. They're examples of people living lives and people getting things wrong. And the fact that some people don't understand that about the Bible is not a problem with the Bible. It's a problem with the person reading it and this person who's supposed to be guiding them in that experience of reading it. That's why in Catholicism we have the magisterium to help guide our understanding, to keep us from making these grave errors. And yeah, sometimes it seems like, if your leadership's making these mistakes, but everything kind of gets filtered out. The the heresy has to run its course like a virus and be ejected from the system. And you could say, yeah, but that heresy, while it's active, will lead to the Crusades or will lead to whatever example of a mal effect. You know what? Same thing with communism, same thing with everything. I mean, all you're doing is opening the door to whataboutisms. You're not solving the problem within the denomination or within the Christian community itself. The problem is the hate. The problem is not the message of the Bible.
If it's
And to
ignorant.
want to destroy them too.
Yeah.
I mean,
That's
look
the-
at
Yeah, the terrifying thing in this is so much of this literature, what apocalyptic literature is it's literature of persecution. Yeah. It's written under conditions of duress and trauma. The terrifying thing about this is that this has become reified literature, and now it's
And again, that's just a interpretation of what apocalyptic is. Apocalyptic is really mostly the style of writing, the coded part of it. That you can write a happy apocalypse. I mean, I think Bart Ehrman is actually the one who says this. The reason why we think of apocalypse that way is because the most popular apocalypse, the apocalypse that everyone knows, is Revelation. But Revelation is not the only example of an apocalypse, either from that time period or from modern time periods. Apocalypses have been written. For some reason, my mind just keeps going to Evangelion. But you look at something like that, the art, the beauty. Are you going to say 1,000 years from now that Evangelion is evil because it shows Nephilim and robots fighting each other, like in a post-apocalyptic world? I don't like when these kind of conversations overpower to the point of almost sounding pro-censorship. I'm very anti-censorship, and to me, I feel that this is too far of a read-in. You can't censor an artist just because a consumer of that art might take it too seriously and act upon it. Sure, they're illegal, whatever the heck, but as an artist, just as art, you can't put these restrictions on literature. And so I don't like where you're going with this.
it's this literature that was written under duress and trauma, but now in the hands of the powerful.
Yes, exactly.
Of
That's the
rulers.
scary part.
That's the
Precisely.
terrifying piece in all of this.
It's interesting you say that. This is why I love scholarship. This is why I like secular academia. Even my investigation into Islam and understanding the cultural milieu, the history, what's going on in Arabia, the whole nine. There's a scholar named Stephen, Stephen, and I can't remember his last name, but anyway, he's written on this whole apocalyptic.
So, Islam has a lot of influence from Christianized Gnosticism, and some Talmudic references as well. Some Jewish mysticism, it mixes in there as well. And it mixes with the Arabic culture at that time and the beliefs. And there's going to be more like polemic beliefs or counter beliefs to the polytheism that supposedly existed at that time in Arabia. Medina, I think especially. And when you read Dune, Dune is based on Islam. You're getting a fictionalized version of Islam. So if you read Narnia, you're getting a fictionalized version of Christianity. You're getting the same message, but it's a Christianized message. Both have wars, both have crusades, both have all this kind of religionese. But the logical conclusions of the characters and the way that things work, the way that things draw out, you can see the different emphasis. This is why I both don't take seriously and I don't appreciate things like Hazen Hotel, or there was one a few years ago, like I think it was like Satan's Daughter. Anyway, like a lot of stuff that was on, that used to be on, was called Adult Swim, which I know is an old thing now. But yeah, they're funny, but they are contradicting the positive messages. It's one thing to go out and attack the negative messages, and it's like, okay, well, I mean, you don't agree with that message, whatever. But when you're attacking the positive stuff and you're viewing it as a negative because in your life it hasn't worked out that way, but you never lived by those principles, your life kind of sucks in this one compartment. That's not a reason to discount the belief. It's if you live out the belief and the belief itself doesn't work because you yourself have lived it out and it doesn't work, not because the other person doesn't want to accept it. That's where the utility of the religion or the principles of the religion start to fall apart. When the principle of a religion is faith, hope, love, charity, forgiveness, mercy, compassion. These are good things. And just because some people misuse them doesn't mean that the principles being taught are bad. Okay.
This is in the time of Muhammad, and how empires were the new apocalypticism by then, according to what he's arguing, is pretty much a race for whichever empire is winning is the one God's going to favor and give, like, at the end. So now it's not I'm the weakest and God's going to vindicate us. It's a race for human involvement to become the most.
I wanted to do, when my channel was when my channel was more healthy. I guess now it's being healthy again. I'm getting viewers again. I wanted to do a read along of the Book of Revelation, and I had started doing a process of reading passages from different parts of the book, and I think I got halfway through Revelation, but the audience just wasn't there for it. But I would like to do that again. I love the Book of Revelation. I'd love to read through it. I'd love to do a read along. If anyone's interested, now that my audience is larger again, please let me know, because I would love to restart that series. Revelation is my favorite book in the Bible, and I would love to talk about it and do it in live streams. We can do it in group chat through StreamYard. All right. Anyway, keep it going.
Supreme empire, so that God then favors you and you win. And so that's why the conquest makes a lot of sense in early Islam conquest, and why these nations are battling it out over and over, from the Persians over here with the Seleucid, and then also dealing with Constantinople, the remaining part of Rome that is even there, in the Roman Catholic or the Catholic Church period, because there's various sects arguing. But like, it's interesting what you just said, because today you can take that to like Bush and the things he was saying when we went to the Middle East with tanks, the whole nine. Like, he's thinking, we're the sword of God.
Again, that's not fair. That's another unfair assessment, because I can go to Herodotus, I can go to Livy and show you passages that sound like news articles today. And even some of the places where there's conflict in some of these ancient books, there's still conflict today, and some of the conflict even sounds exactly the same. So I've literally seen news headlines that match headlines from Herodotus and from Livy. So it's unfair to put that on the Bible, as if the Bible's the only thing, and as if only we could censor out all this horribleness. You know who tried that? China. Didn't work. It doesn't work, man. You can't censor out all of this stuff. Whether it's the Tibetan Book of the Dead, Egyptian Book of the Dead, whether it's Confucius, whether it's the Bhagavad Gita, whether it's the Iliad, the Odyssey, Mesopotamian myths. You can't get away from this. It's human nature. It's going to be encoded into any book, religious or not. Look at Saga. Saga is probably the most liberal comic book I've ever read, and I've read. I can't think of the title right now. But there's another one that's even more liberalish. But the most liberal comic I've ever read is Saga. Saga has violence, has all this horribleness. The characters themselves, regardless of all the progressive messaging in the beginning of the book, by the time you get to the middle of the run, you start to notice that the characters start acting in very conservative ways. All this, and the writers trying to control their characters are adding all these other characters to bring back the liberalism and the freshness that they had in the beginning of the book. But the characters themselves, this is the writer struggling to keep their characters progressive, because the characters themselves are demanding structure and conservatism. Eventually, the conjunction goes off track, and it switches to their daughter character, because the characters that they were writing could no longer speak the message that the writers wanted to write. I think that's amazing that the character, just the narrative of the character, staying true to the character, had the character surpass what the writers wanted to say. It's the same thing here, man. You're not going to get away from human nature, not if you write long enough. You're talking about a book that expands 2,000 years of history. It's the characters are going to overtake the narrative eventually, and they're going to drive the story. So human nature will eventually seep in. So what you're saying doesn't make any sense unless you want a book written by an alien. Unless you're saying the Bible itself was handwritten by God. And if that's what you're saying, then I don't think you'd be doing the channel you're doing, and I don't think I'd be watching it.
Yeah. No, it was a very interesting, back in, I think it was 2000, it was probably 2005, 2006, maybe a little bit before that. The Society of Biblical Literature used to publish an online forum, and in one of them.
Speaking of the Society of Biblical Literature, if anyone could tell me, is that a good resource? Seriously, I want to know. I just bought their commentary on the Bible. It was on sale. It's usually like $60, $70, and it was on sale for $30. So I bought it. I don't have a lot of resources right now. So if I bought a bad book, I want to know so I can return it. Is the Society of Biblical Literature good academia? Let me know. Thanks.
They featured, I think it was 4 or 5 papers by scholars where they specifically pulled apart Bush's speeches and analyzed them on the basis of the apocalyptic language that he was employing.
Wow.
And just pointing it,
Again, the culture at that time was seeped in that way of thinking. Millennium, X-Files, WCW, WWF at the time. Now WWE, but WWF at the time. TV shows, comic books, all of it was seeped in that language. So to say that, Bush happened to be having this language as well, he was of that time. He would have the language of that time. Superman was not escape that. My own writing at that time did not escape that. A lot of writers felt prophetic because they were writing about things that ended up happening just a few months later in real history. And so it was like, how is this happening? How is our cultural milieu, our commentary turning into reality? And so the U.S. government actually hired writers, fiction writers, to come in, and because they were seeing that, hey, look, what you're writing in your fiction is now coming true. How is that happening? Let's put great minds together and see what we can come up with. It will be like calling the siege prophecy. So what you're saying is, again, unfair.
Directly pulling this stuff straight out of the Bible and looking at it in the context in which Bush was speaking and saying, look, this is this is a mission statement. This is about being exactly that. The sword of God in this battle against the forces of darkness.
When I think about what you said about apocalyptic literature,
And again, the sword of God, the sword that comes out of God's mouth as a tongue, that's the word, that's the logos, that's language, that's saying that language is more powerful than violence. Oh, and you know that.
starting off with the oppressed, right? And it being this, hang on just a little bit longer. You can make it, survive, don't give in. And then it going into the hands of the powerful. I mean, it really is akin to if like a little kid is getting bullied by a 13-year-old, right, out on the docks.
I know there's a few people watching, coming in and out of the room. If you all are having good sound, both from audio from the show and audio from me, let me know. Just put a thumbs up. You don't have to talk if you don't want to.
From the battleship on this,
just let me know you can hear everything.
Bully, and they're gonna blow him up.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, whoa, like it's different now, right? You're not the 13-year-old. You're the 13-year-old with the battleship owning father, right? Like,
and again, I don't like what he's saying there, because I was brutally picked on, brutally picked on as a teenager. I was super skinny. I was, the word nowadays would be a sissy, but you know, I was very I was very feminine, and I got brutally picked on for it. Even in my previous job, there were people from my era who worked there who still had those same biases. So it's not as if you get away from this kind of indoctrinated hate of perceived weakness because there's something broken in you that you want to deny that femininity within yourself, or I guess for women to deny that masculinity within yourself. Jungian archetypes here. So I don't think what he's saying is correct, because I've had rocks thrown at me. I've fought off a group of guys before, specifically football players, and won, by the way. But you know, violence for a short while did solve some problems for me. And then eventually, through my study of martial arts and through weightlifting and through philosophy, I learned violence was not the answer. And the Bible itself is one of the ways is how I learned violence was not the answer. Because the Book of Five Rings, the Tao Te Ching, the Quran, what's another book that I read at that time? I didn't finish the Quran at that time, by the way, but I did skim through it. It's the Quran with a K, which is funny. And all of these things were vengeance-based ideologies. And so when I beat up my bullies, I felt strong. I felt justified, righteous. To go from being a kid with string bean arms, who I would have nightmares that I was weak, to having biceps that were bigger than my head, to being able to pick up the star football player off the ground, made me feel powerful. It also got me kicked out of school. And my mentor, the person who taught me martial arts after that point, mostly what he taught me was not how to fight, but was meditation, was how to control my anger and my rage and my shame at being picked on, and how to accept that. And that acceptance came from the Bible. But when the Bible didn't take, he said, okay, look, read everything else first. And I took that a little too literally, and I went back to at the earliest writings I could find at that time, which was the Epic of Gilgamesh and stuff like that. And I read my way up through ancient history, through mythology. Actually, if you do watch the book tour, I show some of those books in my book tour. So what he's saying here again isn't true to human nature. That hunger for justice, that hunger for vengeance can drive people all the way into their adulthood. And I've seen adults who are lost, who are in their 50s, who are still fighting the demons that they were fighting when they were real people in their teenage years. So just because these nerds in this video no longer live in that reality, there's plenty of people that still do. There's plenty of people who still live in jobs and in areas and in societies and groups where misogyny reigns, where violence reigns, where only the strong are right, where might makes right. And these societies still exist today. So him saying this is almost like he's in a fort, in a blanket fort of academia, and he's like, well, people don't act this way. Yeah, they do. Go get a blue-collar job. Go work as a mechanic. Go work as a salesman, a car salesman. Go work as a miner or a deep sea welder. Go work a manly job and see how well your soft interpretation of reality fits and how long you last in that career. Because you won't. They'll chew you out and spit you out. You're not one of the line. You're not someone who belongs here. So real life, real jobs are brutal. And I get what you're saying. And if everybody lived in a nice, peaceful, loving world where nothing went wrong and we could protect everyone, then your interpretation of the Bible could win out. But we don't live in that world. We live in a world of violence. We live in a world of drugs. We live in a world of manipulators, of abusers, of liars. That's the world we live in, and that's the Bible that we need. We need the Bible that deals with that world, with the world that people are actually occupying, not with the ivory tower world of, oh, I set the wrong pronoun. Oh, that's words are hurting. No, the real world where someone pulls a gun out on you because you went down the wrong street. The real world where your best friend steals money from you because they needed an extra $1,000 to buy a boat, not because they were starving to death, but because they just wanted something they couldn't afford. That's the world that people actually live in, and that's the Bible that they need, the Bible that can talk about that world. And that includes all the ugly stuff that you're uncomfortable with.
Like this is different, and the thing is, it's that 13-year-old boy thinking, or that younger boy being picked on, thinking that he's still in that position. He actually believes he's being persecuted and wants to enact all the power that he can get behind him. And the reality is, he's the one in charge.
And I'm sure there's several more things that, when we do stop this recording, that come to mind, that we run into examples, ideas that just Christian apologetics, and we are emphasizing Christian, but that's because we all three were. Okay, so this does not limit itself. Okay, just so everybody knows, this can go for Jewish apologists, this can go for Muslim apologists, this can go for any and all apologists, really, technically, that are out there trying to defend their conclusions that they're starting with. And Richard C. Miller, when I interviewed him not too long ago in California, he said something interesting that goes along with this intellectual stuff you're talking about with the education. And he's like, Derek, it's not honest in terms of like getting to the grip thing we're talking about in the previous video. It's not honest conclusions. He said, because where they're making their converts are, at Christian camp, a summer camp. They're making them in the local church. There is not this mass conversion as Gary Habermas was confronted by Pine Creek the one time. I haven't watched him in a long time, but on that episode, he's like, Gary, can you give me this list of academics who were skeptical atheists?
No, you know who's being converted? The person who's in the violence, the gang member, the guy in prison, the girl who just had an abortion and has a drug habit and has an abusive boyfriend. And she starts going to church or to a mosque and starts gaining empowerment through her faith. She doesn't have access, or he doesn't have access to a college education. He doesn't have the money. What he does have access to is a Bible and a preacher and a community that will support him. That's where your converts are coming from, whether it's Islam, whether it's Christianity. It's the drug addict. It's the prostitute. It's the gang member. It's the homeless guy. That is who Christianity is speaking to. And that's who Christianity has always spoken to, the marginalized, the outcast. And yeah, when it's in the hands of the WASP, when it's in the hands of the powerful, of the established, it is easily misused. You're not wrong. That's why the Bible warns it's easier for a rich man to get to heaven, or it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to get to heaven. That's literally why the warning's there. So I think you're forgetting about the rest of the world. You're forgetting about Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia. You're forgetting about these areas where Christianity is currently growing and is currently the largest. Charismatic Christianity, Catholic Christianity are the two largest growing religions in the world. The third largest is Islam, and the third largest is happening mostly because of birth rates. But where Islam is growing are also places of struggle, not places of ideal. I was going to say idealism. That's not the right word, but utopian idealism is not where these religions. Places where utopian idealism is possible is not where these religions, is not where religion is growing. It's places of conflict, places of struggle and desperation.
To approach this material, and then we're convinced.
Yeah.
Oh my God, the evidence is just so obvious.
Still waiting for the last.
Yeah, like, why is that? And, you know, it's not that. It's something else.
Well, I think it's worth pointing out that, I mean, I'm 50 years old, so I remember a time before you could.
I just want to say that for 50, you look amazing.
You could just go and buy whatever book you wanted on Amazon. The place where Christian apologetic books were sold was in Christian bookstores. The people who were buying them, the people who bought William Lane Craig and Lee Strobel and Ravi Zacharias and Josh McDowell, these old school guys, they're Christian.
I just want to be clear that I never even heard of these people until I was in my 30s. All the names he just listed, I never heard about them until I was in my 30s. Yeah.
Christians. When they would go on speaking tours, they spoke in churches. Josh McDowell came to Vancouver once when I was still in Bible college, and I went to go see him, and he was in a church. Wasn't at a university. These guys aren't. I mean, they are. It's much easier for these guys now, I think, because of the internet and because of the global reach that has provided. But in the old days, it was all. It was a ghetto. It all stayed in-house. You sold your books in the Christian bookstores to Christians, and you went on your speaking tours at the churches to talk to Christians.
All right. I don't really have a lot to say about that ending. All right. I'm going to be closing out the stream in a little bit. If anyone has any questions, I know there's a few of you still in the chat. Lay them on me right now before I jump out. You got about a minute. A minute and a half, and then I'm going to start closing out, okay? Anybody have any questions? Ask them now, or forever hold your peace. If you're an atheist and you're in here and you haven't asked the question, that means you're affirming that Christianity is true. Did I get you? Did I get you? Did I get you? All right, everyone. I love you all. I hope everything's going well. I hope you're having a great night. I hope your careers are going well. I hope your families are safe. And I hope that whatever you're looking for, you find it. I love you all. Have a great night. And enjoy the outro music.
They're looking up to me. They want the best of me now. Best of me now. Best of me now. Best of me. They want the best of me now. Best of me now. Best of me now. Best of me. They want the best of me now. Swear to God, man, I'ma make it soon. Silence all the haters as they see us making moves. I do what I want, so I got nothing to prove. Staying motivated, teaching others what to do. I'm staying focused, my mind is open. They start to notice that I'm in motion. There is no potion, you're not just chosen. It takes devotion to stay composed, man. Never stop, there ain't no time to fall. Try to live, get it up, you got one life to pop.